Hello friends and welcome to Share Them Smiles. I'm Alyssa. So I joined the Top 5 Wednesday Goodreads group a little while back, but haven't made any videos on my own. But for those of you who don't know what that is, Top 5 Wednesdays, it's a Facebook group you can join, and then everyone makes videos on the topics that are kind of assigned for the time for that particular Wednesday. And like I said, I've been wanting to do it, but just haven't really been filming much at all, actually. But I'm hoping to jump back into it, and one of the things that I'm hoping to do is these Top 5 Wednesdays. And so for today's video, it's a pretty easy one to start with. It's your top 5 books on your TBR. I have a lot of books on my TBR, and to limit myself to 5 was actually kind of difficult, but it's good to like set perimeters and challenge myself in that way, I guess. But I did come up with 5 for you, so let's just jump right into it. The first book is, yes, on my TBR, but also I kind of started reading it already, but I'm still going to count it because I haven't been reading it for a while, and that is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I know I've mentioned this in a few videos before. This book I learned about, I think 2 years ago now, and I've wanted to read it ever since, but because I knew that it would be a challenge for me, I wasn't going to allow myself to read it until I completed my Goodreads challenge, which was 45 books. And this year in 2018, I finally did it. And so I started reading this, but didn't make it very far. But really, it's a book which is like 3 stories, like a story within a story within a story, and it's really interesting. So it starts with this guy who is telling the story about this other guy who died, and when that guy died, he got this manuscript which was written by the guy who died, who was blind, about a documentary that was made years ago, and it's about this house where this like doorway and hallway appear where there shouldn't be one. Like, it just makes no sense that it exists. And so it kind of follows that, and it definitely sets like a really spooky kind of atmosphere. And then the way the book is written is to kind of feed into that and kind of envelope you in the story, and how the house is bigger on the inside than on the outside, and how is that possible. From what I can tell, the book is written to kind of replicate that same thing, and it's very cool, but definitely takes like your concentration and your focus. And I decided to do a readathon in the month of January, and the biannual bibliothon, so I ended up putting it aside, but it's definitely on the top of my TBR, and I plan on jumping back into it very soon. The next book I'm going to talk about is Release, a novel by Patrick Ness. Patrick Ness is an author who I read once book by and fell in love with, and that book was A Monster Calls, which I realized was not really, it was someone else's idea or someone else's story, and then they passed away, and so he ended up finishing it, I guess. And so, but it was just so beautiful, and I was like, I think I love this author, and I want to read everything by them. And then I read The Crane Wife this past year, and I was not very impressed by it. But this book I remember hearing about and really wanting, and I could not find it anywhere, but I had heard about it. I knew it existed, and I saw it once in this one bookshop, and then I kept looking for it for like weeks and weeks and weeks and couldn't find it. And so then I ended up going back to the same bookshop, and they only had one copy left, and so I bought it. And I don't usually like to just read the back of it to you, but just so you get an idea of what this one's about. It says, Adam Thorne doesn't know it yet, but today will change his life. Between his religious family, a deeply unpleasant ultimatum from his boss, and his own unrequited love from his sort of ex, Enzo, it seems as though Adam's life is falling apart. All day long, old memories and new heartaches come crashing together, throwing Adam's life into chaos. The bindings of his world are coming untied one by one. Yet in spite of everything, he has to let go. He may also find freedom in the release. Time is running out, though, because way across town, a ghost has just risen from the lake. Which just sounds super interesting to me. Also something that I didn't necessarily realize at first when I saw it, but is very apparent to me now, is this picture is clearly upside down. Like the trees are standing up this way, and this is a railroad track. So I'm interested to see how that plays into it and read this story and give Patrick Ness another chance, because I definitely think he could be one of my favorites and an auto-author for me. So the third book I'm going to talk about today in my top 5 on my TBR is The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. Now, to be honest with you, I had never read anything by her before, but was interested. And then this past year, I read Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda and fell absolutely in love with Becky Albertalli's writing and all of the characters in that. And Leon the Offbeat came out, and I was like, I have to read that book too. And so I got my hands on that, and I finished that, and they just were so lovely and such sweet stories and such amazing characters. And so I had to get this book. I just bought it recently. I am in love with Becky Albertalli's writing. I think she is another person who may be one of my absolute favorite authors. She was definitely one of my favorite authors that I discovered last year. And so I'm super excited to jump into this one. So this book is not the same characters as the other ones. It doesn't follow Simon or like his immediate best friends or anything like that. In this one, we actually follow a character named Molly, who has had crushes on many, many people, but keeps them all secret because she is of the mindset that fat girls have to be careful with letting those kind of emotions show. Yes, she has a twin sister named Cassie who falls in love with a new girl, and that girl has a brother, and it sounds like maybe something will come of that. But I don't know, I just, based on what I've read already by Becky Albertalli, I'm hoping to just find a really sweet story, which is very true to reality while also putting like a positive, warm spin on it. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to it. So we'll see how this goes. The fourth book that is on the top of my TBR this year is History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. This is one of those stories that I believe is going to be very heartbreaking. On the other side of that, very much so different from The Upside of Unrequited. And it's all about kind of we follow this main character whose ex-boyfriend dies, and it's kind of just how he deals with that. And I also believe that it talks about that his ex's current boyfriend as well, and just kind of the after effects of when someone passes away, which I think is something that's really important. I think that that's something that I'm interested to see how it's explored in this novel. I've heard great things about it. I've heard great things about Adam Silvera. I actually own a couple of his books, but haven't read any of them yet, and this was not the one that I initially thought I wanted to be my first Adam Silvera book, but just the more that I hear about it, the more that I definitely think that this is one that I have to dive into very soon. And the fifth book on my top 5 books on my TBR is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Now, the reason that this one is so high on my TBR is because actually my mom gave it to me with another book. And we both love to read, but we don't always just like hand books to each other to read. So if we give each other a book, it means that the book definitely moved the other person or meant something to them. And so I definitely want to read this to find out why she felt so compelled to give it to me, even if it was just, I read it and I thought you would like it. But it tells the story of two sisters in World War II, I believe in France. Yes, in German occupied France, and how, I guess, just how they deal with things. I think they deal with it differently. I don't really know too much about this. I just know that I've seen it time and time again as like on different like lists of the best books of the year and things like that. But also, like I said, because my mom gave it to me to read specifically, I'm definitely interested in seeing, diving into this one and really figuring out what it is. But I don't really know too much about it going into it, because this isn't one that I personally sought out, but that makes it almost more interesting to me, and so I'm excited to jump into that. So this was my first try at a Top 5 Wednesday. I hope you all enjoyed it. Let me know what you think down below. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're curious about future videos that I'll be putting out, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching. I love you all, and as always, don't forget to share them smiles. Ciao for now, friends.